So I'm delighted to welcome Miranda Cumberbatch to talk to us about the Heat Hub project, which is attempting to get retrofit happening on a more wide-scale way than just a small number of climate pioneers. Getting retrofit to happen wide-scale is key if Britain's going to meet its net zero targets. So this is a really exciting project, particularly as Britain has the worst housing stock in Europe for heat loss. It's partly because we have the oldest housing stock because our industrial revolution was earlier than in other countries, but also even homes built in the last 50 years leak more heat than their European counterparts of the same age. So, we do need wide-scale retrofit. Of course, what's possible depends on the age and style of the building. You would never be able to get a drafty medieval castle up to passive house standards. So what's exciting about this particular project is that it has its focus on the hard-to-treat old buildings. And by focusing on these, by focusing on the old buildings and the hard-to-treat ones, it's tackling the most difficult homes to retrofit. Just as a straw poll, how many people of you have still to start retrofitting your homes? Put your hands up with the reaction button. Put a thumb up. Or wave, whichever. One or two. And how many of you have done some retrofit but still have more to do? I would put my hand up in this category. And how many of you have broadly done as much as you can given the age and style of your home? Oh, some good hands going up there too. Great. So, I appreciate many of you may have come to this webinar because you're interested in the wider picture of whether this project can help get Britain's housing retrofit ready for net zero, but there may be some of you who are interested in this project's help to either start to do your own retrofit or do more on your personal home. Shall I do another hands up for that? If you think you might. Well, let's leave that till the end because you might not know till you hear what Miranda has to say. So, as I say, getting retrofit happening on a wider scale is so important, and so I'm extremely interested to hear to what extent the phase 1 of the Heat Hub project managed to do that, what the lessons learnt are, and how it is planning to tackle any challenges that raised to address the challenge of hard-to-treat old houses in this second phase of the project. So, over to you, Miranda.
Yeah, so
Yes, it's come now.
Wonderful. It's echoing, I think. Yes, I've read the brief and I've tried to put together a presentation that follows that brief. But first of all, I'll go through, what can increase retrofit in hard-to-treat homes, a case study. So I'll go through our aims and objectives of the project, followed by looking at phase 1, what we achieved in phase 1 of the project, and then to follow that with what phase 2 looks like, and also a look at what's happening in Hope Valley as well and how we can come together. So the purpose of this service is to provide free, independent, in-person advice that is tailored to the homeowner. And another key part of it was really to try and provide a universal offer with the work that we do at NEP. So the focus is for this project, self-funding homeowners. So it's not about fuel poverty, it really is about all of those homeowners that for years have not had any support, financial support or specific energy advice to know about the different steps to upgrade their home. And the service is offered across Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, so the D2, N2 area. In terms of the aims, we did a lot of research. We collaborated with Derbyshire County Council. We looked at the Rich Report and so on. And from our own work over the last 20 years at Nottingham Energy Partnership, to realise that there is a need to boost the confidence of homeowners, so that they feel more so that they feel that they've got access to resources, so that they can embark on those retrofit projects. And the way to do that is to increase knowledge. So for us, the toolkit of in-person activities is really key, and other resources as well, in order to increase the number of installations that are happening in the self-funding sector and just overall. So when we're looking at hard to treat properties, we broke them down into three categories. But first of all, in terms of the targeting of those hard to treat properties and thinking about the self-funding sector, we have been looking at homes that are in what they call the index of multiple deprivation areas 7 to 10. So those really are those areas where you tend to find larger homes and people have the disposable income to possibly embark on an home energy upgrade. So the different categories when it comes to hard to treat include, first of all, include off-gas grid homes. For a long time, these have been ignored. Not too long ago, the government offered funding in the form of the Home Upgrade Grant Scheme, but you had to be on a low income to be eligible. So we decided that off-gas grid homes were a category that we wanted to pursue, because it still is in place. There's a £7,500 grant towards the cost of an air source heat pump or a heat pump. So it's what does work is to have an incentive to actually embark on some of this work. Secondly, we decided that we would include homes in the conservation area. For a very long time, these homes really have been ignored when it comes to government policy. And we saw it as a chance as well to really hone in on the need to look at the materials that are being used when it comes to home energy upgrades, and ensure that the right materials are being used for the different properties. And I guess, so just to go back on those ones, and often these are the homes where you've got they can be the homes where you've got serious condensation and damp problems. And then lastly, because we always want to try and include everybody, there is a focus on targeting those homes that have a low EPC rating of D to G, because they do tend to be the worst performing homes. But we are definitely not, we don't say no to anybody. So we'll always assess each individual homeowner's property. So the project was set up with this idea that we're offering in-person advice. And this in an age when digital platforms are becoming more and more popular, and it is very hard these days even to find a phone number on a website to speak to anybody. So for us, we really wanted to be standing before people in order to build trust in local services. And so we put on the various in-person activities, being events, which we tend to hold on a weekend. We've got one coming up this Saturday, and we go to each local authority area in turn and choose different venues to hold these events. And we follow them up with workshops and webinars. So from the events, we find out what people would like, the topics they would like to cover, and then we hold technology workshops on those topics. It tends to be on solar, heat pumps, also home insulation, different materials and ventilation as well. In addition to that, we offer surveys. These surveys are very in-depth. They're retrofit assessment surveys, and we've got a very trusted retrofit assessor to complete those. And from those surveys, we produce the tailored Future Fit Home Energy Plan. So with the events, as I said, we do tend to hold them on at the weekend, and we go local authority by local authority area. When we have these events, obviously we introduce the project, but importantly, we have attendance from conservation officers, also manufacturers or installers of the different technologies like the heat pumps and solar, as well as experts with insulation and insulation manufacturers, as well as architects. So there's a range. And this is also that we have breakout sessions, usually a couple in that period, 35 minutes each, that householders then have the chance to ask questions. And what's beautiful, I think, about that setting, both for the events and the workshops, is you'll have those who are quite bold and they'll put their hands up and ask questions. So people get the chance to sometimes have their question answered without asking, but they meet like-minded people. And usually, and sometimes people can feel a bit isolated, thinking, is anyone else doing this? And so we let them know about the grants that are available and also get feedback in terms of what people's experience was of the actual event. And similarly, as I said, we hold the workshops, and this is a chance to hone down on individual technologies. So the workshop will be about heat pumps, or it'll be about a single measure. And just so you know, NEP is also a registered training provider. So we've got courses that are registered with the London OCN Training Centre. So importantly, it's good with the surveys that we carry out, we gather all the data, analyze it, and then we create reports. Now, we started off with just one report, and it was more of a general report covering the whole house. But in recognition of the fact that some people will have a house that is C rated, for instance, and therefore more likely to have the insulation sorted out and may well be ready for clean heat or renewable energy, so that in the form of solar panels, we produced a second report, which is our Clean Heat and Power Plan report as well. Now, with this report, what's good about it is it provides that step-by-step phased approach to improving the energy efficiency of the home. And we do emphasize that the expectation is not that you have to do everything at once, but you can certainly, consider your budget, think about, your current situation. Does it fit to have it all done at the same time? But importantly, the steps are there within that report, so you know what to do, and they build on each other. So the reports, certainly with the Future Fit Home Energy Plan, the first one very much focuses on the fabrics first principles to retrofit, emphasising the need for ventilation, reviews the suitable technologies for that particular home. It provides the key metrics, both pre-install, so what's your current energy demand, carbon as well, carbon emissions, and also fuel bills, to then be able to demonstrate your potential savings in those areas following the install of the different technologies. We always provide advice on the government funding. Also, if the person is in the conservation area, we'll provide details relating to that as well. And I think because we, particularly with homes in the conservation area, the significance and heritage values are really key, and we elaborate on those. So then the idea of significance lies at the core of these fabric first principles, because really, there's obviously a lot of detail when it comes to your heritage properties, but if you can use those principles and carry them through with all retrofit work to make sure that the quality is high. And for us at NEP, we have always focused on quality. The last thing we want is that homeowners are coming back saying the job is not done properly. And this is something, and a while ago now, over 10 years ago, we did whole house retrofit, which was very new at the time, installing insulation and then heating. And this is for 300 properties, brick properties. And we can count the complaints or people coming back to us really on one hand. That's because we would have people out on site observing the different stages of the install. And as part of just to emphasize, as part of those the plan is this focus or is information on the natural materials, and we do push really for that use of natural materials and respecting the construction of the building. So with the Clean Heat and Power Plan, this, just to emphasize, this is really for those people where, most of the house is insulated and they can really start to think about, well, can I electrify the heat? Can I get some solar panels? Can I integrate storage as well as, possibly integrate generation and storage? So I think at this time we can look at how did we do in phase one. So phase one came out of a call from the government for as part of the local energy advice demonstrator. And we were very fortunate. We were one of 36 organisations that succeeded in with our bid and funding to run this project. And at the time, it was all very hopeful that the funding would continue. We worked very hard to succeed. And then we were told there wouldn't be any more funding, unfortunately. But we sourced our own funding to continue the project. So some key performance indicators. So we had a target of 2,000 in-person advice interactions, and we achieved 1,981. So we were very pleased with that. And then we had surveys, a target of 420 surveys and future fit home energy plans, and we achieved 440 across Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. And then when it came to installs, because the focus wasn't on the installs, it was on the in-person advice, but we added a KPI, a key performance indicator, being the installs, and we put down 60. We were very conservative. We didn't know how it would go. And we achieved that. No, sorry, 55, sorry, and we achieved 60. And with the measures, we had 228 measures, and they totaled £547,000. So it's quite a considerable amount of money, which you'll see in a moment. And I think with those results, what it does, it kind of evidences the fact that self-funding householders do appreciate the information and resources about decarbonising technologies that are delivered in person, because what they were doing is they were having the plan and proceeding to the install stage. And I guess the consumer experience is heightened with the provision of samples of materials and equipment and case studies to compound their knowledge further, which they get at the events and workshops. So I've just got the figures that we achieved in Nottingham. And so the budget for Nottingham was 289,000. And we had, for Nottinghamshire, we had a target of 676. And so of those 1,900 plus in-person advice numbers, 1,200 of those we achieved in Nottinghamshire. And it breaks down, so you can see how the events, there's 347, surveys 317, and plans, actually that should say 420, yeah, 317, sorry. And then other activities as well, including the workshops. And what's interesting in the top right-hand corner is looking at the homes that were retrofitted or have been already and are pending. So we have a total of 121, and altogether energy saving measures at 212. And what I find interesting about this is that generally people tended to be installing 2 measures on average, which is wonderful. And it kind of shows or indicates that people are following the plan. And certainly when we've listed the measures they've installed, you can see that they are. So when we look at the pie chart in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see there, which it did surprise us, because solid wall insulation is very expensive. But the largest proportion of work was solid wall insulation, both internal and external. As we would expect, next was solar. With loft insulation, many people have their lofts insulated because there's been so many programs. It's a relatively cheap measure. And so that generally tended to be top ups. Some people did floor insulation, which much to my surprise, because obviously it's a very disruptive measure. Heat pumps slowly getting there, and batteries were installed as well. So it's a nice collection of measures being installed. And this is what our clients had to say from phase 1. So we've got detail there which you can read, from the workshops. Because with the workshops, we had those which were more theory-based, and in that, we would talk through the process of insulating a house, for instance. We would bring examples of the materials down so people could see them. But we also offer practical workshops, so people have the chance to come down. We've got a rig so people can learn how to install room and a roof insulation, also loft insulation. And we, NEP, purchased a house. So we have a terrace house that we purchased. It's an old terrace house, so like pre-19, and solid brick. And we've used it as a training centre. So this house is gradually being retrofitted by the community. And we're at the stage now where lime plaster's gone on, and it's so exciting. But so we carried out, like we do for every other house, the retrofit plan, survey and retrofit plan. And the next stage is the install stage. And we've been holding training sessions so people can learn the different stages to retrofit their home. So it's a long process, but it does make a difference. So we have the workshops both at our hub and also in the house. And you can see there where someone said, now I've decided to get my old roof replaced and more insulation fitted. There's also solar panels and battery installed, which is all very exciting. And then there's also comments regarding the report. And that was from one of the reports that was completed in Derby. Very pleased with the report and support, usually helpful in deciding the priority of works. And so for them, they were going to prioritise the underfloor and loft insulation to begin with. And that's it. We kept pushing the fact that you don't have to do it all at once. You've got to think about your budget in particular. And I'll leave you a few minutes just to read those, as I have some water. And I think the other thing as well is, we're very personable, and we encourage people, if they've got questions, to call us. We've got our home improvement manager, always on call, goes out if necessary as well, and very knowledgeable. And we do have a very knowledgeable in-house team. We have architects, a couple of architects working for us as well. So, of course, with any project, there's always challenges, but it's useful to see get some of those insights as well. For us, time is always a factor. It's good that we have 2 years of funding, but obviously we need to start looking for additional funding to keep this project going. What is exciting is that East Midlands Combined County Authority they promote this project on their website. And I think, we have their ear in terms of trying to extend this project further, which is wonderful. The in-person public engagement, I think that it's really important for people to have that chance to meet experts in the field. You can often feel nervous about speaking to experts, or those who, contractors. And I think us bringing them to the audience really helps. And the way we set some of the workshops up is that we encourage people to send their questions in when they register, so that we can save on time and incorporate it into the workshop. So as that presentation is being delivered, their questions are being answered. So then it gives time for more questions. But retrofit work is very complex, and so it's really important that people have the time and space and hear from others as well how they can proceed to install. The impartiality is really important as well. So with the contractors, we always say to everyone, you should get 3 quotes. We have a small team of contractors, and so whilst we can offer those contact details, they may already have through friends details of other contractors, and that's fine. So we're not pushy about, oh, you must go with our specific contractor. The workshops are there as well, so that DIY, we've come across quite a few people who are quite interested in doing it themselves. So the workshops do help, and it's a chance to answer questions. So there's definitely no hard sell, and we try to be very consistent in our messaging. When it comes to the marketing and communication, so strangely enough, the traditional marketing seems to work better. Certainly at this stage, so leaflets and letters, or postcards going through doors seems to work really well. Also getting in, being able to get in touch with the community, the community groups, the climate action groups as well. It makes a huge difference. I think the local authority endorsement that we have as well also assists, because, as I mentioned at the very start, trust is an issue. So the thing is, I think with social media, and I think people who tend to be thinking about retrofitting their homes, social media doesn't always provide that, doesn't necessarily fill people with confidence that they know, who is offering the service. So I think, traditional marketing, certainly in our experience, has been more effective. But it's expensive, because Royal Mail is very, very expensive. So again, when we're able to collaborate with community groups, usually that's when we get our leaflets delivered by hand, even though we do have a team of leaflet distributors. But it does help when there's connections within the community. And something that we particularly try to emphasize or deliver is an area by area rollout. When you see your neighbour doing work, people are usually inquisitive, what's going on there, and word of mouth works a treat. So, and I think certainly with the second phase of the programme, that is something that we are wanting to concentrate on more, is trying to target areas, and if we can, generate as much interest from streets where possible. And of course, we cannot ignore protecting architectural heritage. We've seen some disasters, where you see synthetic materials being installed onto solid brick wall properties, limestone properties, and sandstone properties as well. And it just doesn't work. You go further on down the line, you will have issues. So the challenge is always trying to get the messages out there before people embark onto projects. and are perhaps swayed by contractors who say, oh yes, this will do. So that's quite a big piece of work in itself. So I did actually read a very interesting piece of research by Stephen Platt, How Green is My Valley? That was very interesting. And actually his response, 200 plus people responding is really good. But something we always do when we go to different areas is just kind of present the average energy performance certificate rating in the UK is actually a D. And then we look at how is that area doing compared to the average. And I pulled off some stats, and from that we could see that homes with an energy performance certificate. So these are you often see them they look a bit like what you see on fridges. I'm sure everybody knows what they are. When you sell a house these days, you have to get an energy performance certificate. And what it does, it rates your house from A to G, G being the worst performing in terms of energy efficiency, and A being the best. And so when we look at Hope Valley, we've got 1,054 homes within EPC. And as it shows there, you've got 45% of those are rated E to G. So it's low, those are lower than the national average. Now, those E to G rated properties generally will not have sufficient insulation. They may have some loft insulation, but it's very unlikely that they've got wall insulation. A cavity wall property may have, that's uninsulated, may get to an E, but it's not definite. And then you've got 39% of properties at that average of a D rating. So they're likely to have some insulation, probably, the 270 millimeters or 300 millimeters in the loft and a decent boiler. And what's interesting here is that 14% have a C rating, which probably means that more than likely it's very well insulated, and they may even have, or they've got partial insulation, they've got solar PV on the roof. But it's quite a small percentage. And then the highest ratings are B, and that's only 1%. So there's work to be done. There's obviously a lot of insulation work to be done, and then to come on to your green technology and maybe looking at electrification of the heating. Now, contrary to most properties across the UK, 78% are on mains gas. Usually it's a lot higher, so anything from 86 to 90% of homes are on mains gas, and 21% are off gas. Now, obviously, the government's push in their latest announcement with the Warm Homes Plan is green technology, electrifying heat, and trying to get as many heat pumps installed as possible. And then when we look at homes with less than 150 millimeters of loft insulation, so when a home has that amount in, we would always say they should top it up. If it's higher than that, we would say it's not urgent. So those that could top up their loft insulation, you've got 40% of those with an EPC. So that's equivalent to £425. It's quite a lot. And then walls that are insulated, we have a figure of just 17%, which probably is an indication of the type of walls that we are dealing with in Hope Valley. And then there's a lot of conservation areas. So there's a need to have the conservation officers on board. So phase 2. So with phase 2 of the project, we have £235,000 of funding, so less than we had for the first round. And we are looking for additional funding to obviously to keep it going and also to increase our outputs. In terms of the delivery model, it's exactly the same. So we were sticking with the in-person advice activities. We're sticking to the same geographical coverage as well. And the project will run for 2 years, so slightly longer than the first phase. and we will still focus on those hard to treat homes. So those three categories of off-gas grid, the DTG rated homes, and those in the conservation area. So as I said, the activities will stay the same: events, workshops and webinars, surveys and future fit home energy plans. And what we're really trying to do this round is build our relations with the local authority. I mean, we work well with many of the local authorities, but that local authority endorsement makes a huge difference when people are receiving any literature through their doors. And so, and I think, you know, we're trying to reverse perceptions around retrofit and establish the hub as a trusted source of advice. And also, and it's timely as well, because again, having read through the Warm Homes Plan, the government wants to have hubs, essentially. They want to have organisations that where consumers can go and feel that they're going to get quality advice to support them on their retrofit journey. Another thing is marketing and communications. For us, local authorities, again, linking up with their marketing departments. But in addition to that, so that there's more, we're more visible on the local authority web pages, also having entries in their newsletters and promotion on the intranet. And then lastly is for the events and workshops, trying to extend our reach. And this one really is about speaking to groups and working with groups like yourself, because it's one of the best ways of, one, instilling the trust, and two, just finding, basically, through them, reaching out to new people as well. So just to kind of conclude, so when people come through to us, we obviously register onto the scheme, and they can do that online. They can also phone us, and of course they can do it in person at the events. And that's a kind of 1 to 2 week process. And then we would call them to complete a retrofit, to book in a retrofit assessment. 1 to 2 weeks later, that home survey would take place. And then from that, within a sort of 5 to 8 week period, we would produce the future fit home energy plan that is focused on their property rather than it just being a generalized plan. When that's completed, we obviously send it send it electronically, or sometimes we send it a paper copy. But we also let people know about what other workshops we have, so they can participate in those as well. And we would also let them know about, if they want to proceed straight away, about the range of different contractors, the technologies that they're interested in. And we offer as well, giving them time to read their plan. They can contact us and have a 30-minute consultation about the plan. So if they've got any further questions, then they can book that in, and everyone can do that. And this is, I've just put up an example of some of the pages from our welcome pack, because I think that's really key as well. We didn't have this in the first round of the project, so this is different. So we just felt it was really important that people felt really clear, had that clarity around the service and what the next stages are going to be. So it has an introduction about the project, but also there's a timeline in terms of what to expect as well. And then there's other things like the next steps when it comes to home improvement, what DIY workshops are up and running, as well as the grants and updates on any further grants and resources like fact sheets and frequently asked questions. Also, what's different in this second phase, we came across a lot of, fair number of very large properties. And what we've said is that for properties up to 4 beds, it's all free. But then for 5 beds and or more, then a price is there would be a cost incurred. So larger properties are required to pay a fee. It's still very, very reasonable. So your retrofit assessment is £65. Well, it's a total actually of £149 for the retrofit assessment and home energy plan. Or if you're having the clean heat and power plan, it would be that the say would be the retrofit assessment and the clean heat and power plan, which again comes to £149. And private landlords, our view on private landlords is that for many that it's a business, and so there would be a fee there. Again, it's still a lot cheaper. It is subsidised, so there's about 60% discount for landlords as well. And that's it, actually. So I've come to the end. I can't hear you, Zizi.
Thank you very much. Do you want to stop sharing your screen so we can have more of a conversation sort of between people?
Let's see if I can move this mouse, which is being very temperamental.
Oh yes, hopefully your mouse is now working.
It is.
You've got some lovely photos.
Oh,
some I
thank you.
recognised and some like this one. I've no idea where it is. And
Okay, hold on. If I stop, oh, hold on, stop sharing. It's better.
great. Well, I'll throw it open to questions in a moment, so people do think of your questions. But in the meantime, I'll start with the first question. In the insights and challenges, a lot of what you seem to be saying was about how you set it up. For example, that you were offering in-person advice wasn't really an insight. That was the way you set it up. Impartial information and an in-person advice were two separate things. And doing it area by area, again, was how you set it up rather than an insight. So what were the things from phase one that you hadn't expected that you learnt?
Well, I think that when it comes to I think what it is that the feedback that we got from people, because we completed an evaluation following the retrofit assessment, following any workshops. Actually, I can hear an echo. I don't know why.
Oh, it's me. I have to keep remembering.
Sorry, I thought it was me. It's okay then. It's fine. So I guess the reason I put insights there is because we got the feedback from people. So whilst we'd set it up, there was that confirmation that people said to us, gosh, didn't know this existed. And to have this resource really makes a difference. And what was surprising is it's what we hoped, but what was surprising is that people came 2 or 3 times. And this is the reason why we would hope that is because of the complexity of retrofit. And it's a staged approach. So you might learn about one technology, and then you might come and learn about another technology. If you're starting, you might learn about home insulation. And if you do it, you might come back again, and because you're thinking about solar. And that's what we wanted to see. We didn't know that was going to happen, and it did happen. So I think so I think it's really important that in setting up something like this, people realize they can come back, because sometimes we can think that, oh, well, we're just, we're a nuisance. It's very easy for people to feel they're being a nuisance. And it was hoped for, but also very surprising, pleasantly surprising that people were coming back. In terms of, and I guess with the impartiality, fortunately, we've worked with a number of contractors, and then we're trying to introduce new contractors. And sometimes what does happen in those situations is that people, they sell themselves. And, it's like, oh, if you come to me, it's this, that, and the other. And across the board, we never had that. And again, it was that feedback of that they felt they were just having a conversation with somebody that was interested and they had the expertise around the subject and they weren't being pushed in any way. And yes, it is something that we wanted, but I think we succeeded in it. We seem to succeed. And we need that. We always need that feedback to make sure we are doing it in the right way. I think also in terms of lessons learned. So the thing is, we've had to work really hard in terms of getting the local authorities on board. It wasn't a given, and it's a strange one really because the funding came from central government via the Midlands Net Zero Hub. So you'd think that you'd have all the local authorities on board, but we've had, it hasn't been easy, and we've got there in the end. So it isn't, yeah. So the thing is, it takes time to get the local authorities on board and to get the marketing departments, all those key stakeholders in place.
Thank you. I feel that's given me a better idea than that insight and challenges. Um, you might only want to shout about the things that went well, but is there anything that didn't work as well as you'd hoped?
Well, straight one. Keep talking about local authorities. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess what it is that you have those local authorities that you work really well with, and some can be a little bit slow in coming forward. And I say it all the time, wherever I go, the endorsement is really, really important. But getting to people, we want to reach people. So that is probably the hardest thing, the marketing. And that's why I put that slide up about looking for help in those different quarters, because we have to keep trying to find new people, new homeowners that are interested in this. And it's not a clear path in terms of what is the best way to market the program, because also we go to different areas and we get completely different responses. So for instance, in Rushcliffe, we get an absolutely fantastic response. Then you'll go to another area in the county and hardly any response at all. And you think, why? And so, yes, the promotion of the scheme is tough and it takes a lot of work, really does. Because we always aim, if we can, to try and get, so for the event on Saturday, we've got 45 people signed up. That's fantastic. This is just what we want, because allowing for cancellations for whatever reason, it means we'll definitely have at least 30, 35 people there on a Saturday. So sometimes I think to myself, are we aiming too high with the numbers that we want? And I don't think we are. I think it's good. But yeah, probably a lot of work goes into that. So it's probably the toughest thing.
Oh, well, thank you. So I won't hog all the questions. Do other people have questions they'd like to ask? Louise, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hello. I was interested, you mentioned that you were surprised by the uptake in wall insulation because it was so disruptive. Did you ever get to the bottom of why that was? From a sort of technical point of view, from my background, it's one of the most effective solution, ceilings, roofs, and walls are super effective. So I just wondered, is it that? Is it the messaging that sort of technically it achieves the most, or was there what feedback did you get, or did you get to the bottom of that? That's my question.
All right. So the thing is, I think that, for me, it was the cost. So I was concerned about how expensive solid wall insulation is, first of all. And then I thought that might put people off. And I don't, from a personal point of view, I wasn't worried about the disruption, which is probably not very good. But I'm aware of the disruption. And I think, for many people, when they were embarking on this major um, retrofit work, I think they kind of accepted, because it's also in the reports and the events and so on, we talk about that and we don't shy away from it. We talk about the fact that the one that scares me is actually floor insulation, because that is very disruptive. But it surprised me that people were doing it. And I think it's great. So it was more that I was concerned, knowing how expensive it is, that people would think, oh no. But what's interesting actually, and this goes back to Zizi saying what the insight is, that how high people put comfort. And that's it. And so, we can mistakenly think of that, like me, think about the cost. But if people have the money, it's like comfort. I want to be warm. I'm tired of these drafts. If I do this, it will, I'll achieve my goals. So I think, because also for me, I work, part of my work is tackling fuel poverty. And then you've got the other side where people are thinking, I'd like to get this work done. So maybe it's me and I'm just wrestling with those that, do struggle on a daily basis. But so I think it was the comfort factor. So people talked about the fact that their home was drafty. Other ones, we've got a very good case study. And in fact, I can send you the link after this. We've got a very good case study. And so for this couple, and we're actually doing a workshop in about 2.5 weeks. We call it a retrofit party, but it's a chance for people to hear from those who've got case studies, who've done the work. And for them, they wanted to move to a house with a bigger garden. But at their time of life, they thought, they've got a 1930s home. Let's just do it. We've got the money. This house is not warm. Let's retrofit this house. They did it all internally. So they kept the beautiful architecture. And they've put the heat pump in. They've gone the whole hog. And, they've got the disposable income. So cost wasn't an issue. And, and it's this whole thing. We are targeting people in certain demographics. So it's realizing that comfort comes first, and also people saying, I want to do my bit for the environment. And that, honestly, it's music to my ears. It really is.
I think if people have a clear well, this is my view, that messaging is so important. And if you're giving a clear message and clear instructions on how people can achieve this, people who have the money or have the grants will do it. I think a lot of people are reticent, that they're not sure, are they getting the right information? Are they getting conflicting information? But I think clear messaging is so important. So I would imagine that's a big success from what you've been doing.
Well, the thing is, and it's funny you should say that, because and I said marketing, and I should have gone into more detail, but you reminded me, and again, answering Zizi's point, in terms of insights, key messaging, consistency. And we spent so long trying to get the messaging right. We're not perfect, but we keep trying, tweaking, because that key messaging is really important. It really is. So.
In a way, it doesn't surprise me, because solid wall houses can be so cold. I can share my screen. Can you see that?
Not the.
Has it come through?
Oh, yes. Lovely.
Quaker community in this building. I lived there 9 years. I can see my internet's unstable, so I hope you're hearing this. In the early days of it, before I moved in, the building was so cold that people would say, I'm never going to stay in that building in winter. And what the Quaker community did was take out a mortgage to do internal. They weren't allowed to do external because of it being Peak District National Park, but they did internal wall insulation in every room. They took out a mortgage to pay for it, and it made such a vast difference. It made the place viable.
It does. So sorry. I mean, something. Reading through the Warm Homes Plan, there's a fair amount about energy advice, hubs, them wanting to have examples of good work and proposals. And I think there's an opportunity, something I'm going to be working on, to take plans or proposals to them, to the government, because so for instance, and I think rural settings for a long time haven't been able to benefit from much of the policies around retrofit. So I think there is a case. We're working with Stanley and Stanley Common, looking at their properties, putting something together. And I think more of this work needs to happen so that, because we've done it before, we've done energy audits. So for instance, it's slightly different, but here in the Meadows, where I work, we're surrounded by Victorian properties, and we've done an energy audit of all of those properties. And what it means is we've looked at all the different archetypes, put it together to put all the information together around that, the energy demands and so on, so that we could produce an insulation guide. And I think we have to think along those lines in terms of how do we address homes constructed, of stone, for instance, in villages like yours and areas like yours, and so that we can try and accelerate retrofit for these types of properties. And it's something that we can do. I'd be happy to work with you any way in which I can, because I'm just so determined, really, that we try and present models of how to do things, and also we set the bar really high in terms of quality as well.
I've been told my colleague Simon I'm not clear if they're all his questions or whether he's collected a number, but he has questions he's texted me. So Simon, would you like to unmute and ask some of the questions that are either yours or collected?
Yes, certainly. These are some ones that I've thought about. Really, how does one? How available are your services to those of us in Derbyshire?
They are. So the project is for Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire, so the D2N2 area. In fact, one of our retrofit assessors, our main one, actually lives in Derbyshire, so very accessible. I mean, we've done oh gosh, how many surveys? We've done we're approaching 200 surveys now in Derbyshire, so yeah, very accessible.
So what's the relationship between Marches Energy and yourselves? Because when I applied for one of I'm in a oil-fired off-gas grid listed building, traditional construction. And in fact, it went from Marches to your people to do the survey.
So with Marches in the first phase, Marches and we worked together. We still work together, but they were on a different project. But for this first phase of the project, they worked with us, and our capacity's greater than theirs. And for the second phase of the project, we didn't get as much funding, so we're still covering the same area, and still offering the same services. So if we're able to get additional funding, then we may look again to bring Marches on board. But they struggled with the retrofit assessor, I think. Yeah, and it was unfortunate actually, because I think one of the first events was possibly, I think one of our first events was in the area, Uh,
Tideswell, was that?
No, it
oh
was
no,
in
it's Tideswell.
Bamford.
Yes.
Oh, well, there
Sorry.
was also a workshop in Bamford
Oh yes, that was.
using traditional materials. Yes, you're right. There was a Tideswell initial, just the project in general, and then there
Yes.
was a specialist workshop about natural building materials in Bamford.
Yes. Yeah. So we still work with them, but not on this particular project.
And can I also just ask about the relationship with the Peak District National Park planners? Because in previous days, the Derbyshire Dales District Council officer told me that she'd had money to retrofit houses for people in fuel poverty,
Mhm.
and their plans for these houses were stopped by the Peak District Park planners. So you talk about the relationship with local authorities. For our area in the Hope Valley, the national park is a huge hindrance to us retrofitting, installing solar, installing heat pumps, all the things that we want to do to try and mitigate climate action.
Yeah, so the thing is, we at the start of the project, we had a did a presentation to both the conservation officers and planners in both areas, both Notts and Derby, and I'm working with some in the county in Nottinghamshire in more detail. I've yet to go back to some of the ones in Derby, because it does require a different approach. And I guess, and I understand, well, I mean, I think that when you're delivering fuel poverty projects, that it's a lot different from delivering projects for your self-funding market. And I actually think you get a different quality of contractor personally, because and for me, I have seen that, some of the contractors that are working on some of those government schemes, they don't know as much as they should do, or their approach to buildings is not as it should be. And but I do think, which is why I've been working very closely with the conservation officers, and they've been coming to our events as well, that there's a body of them that are very keen to be able to share information and also come up with plans to be able to retrofit the home. So I think, on my to-do list is to speak to the some of the conservation officers in Derbyshire again to put together a bit more of a comprehensive package, and it goes across the board, actually across the geographical area, where we're very clear about what can be done in the different areas. And I just think that there is a requirement for them to be a bit more open and forward with what is on offer, rather than just saying, oh, because we hear some that will say, oh yeah, just come to us and let us know, and then we can talk about it as if it may happen, when clearly it wouldn't. You wouldn't be able to install the things you're talking about. We did a very good piece of work with, I know it's completely different, but with the city council, different types of properties, but with the city council in Nottingham. And we also invited landlords to that event. But it was like we had a series of meetings looking at the different archetypes. And then we actually came up with a plan that, with solid brick wall properties, you would not put external wall insulation on the front. And if you can see the side from the main road, you wouldn't put it on the side either. It would only go on the back, external, that is. You'd have to insulate it internally. And so what now happens, I mean, it's not great because I don't think they're very proactive, but jobs do get stopped. So if the scaffolding goes up onto, a period building, in particular areas, conservation areas, and those are not in the conservation area in the city, because they're going to be installing external wall insulation, it's stopped. And I think we have to, I mean, not just me or just NEP, but we need to be having some of those conversations, which is on my list of things to do, so that we can, and also getting the word out, because I've seen somebody cross the road from me, rip out their windows and install some windows which do not match the rest of the street. And I live, they made the area I live in a conservation area, but the windows do not fall under that. But the person didn't know that this area is a conservation area. So sometimes, most people I think do know, but it's still important that people realise what it means. And I think, possibly, depending on demographics, people do understand. They might choose to ignore it, who knows? But there is more work for us to do. So those are some of the things that we will, that's on my to-do list for this second phase of the programme.
Thank you. Steve.
I hope that answers your question, Simon. Sorry.
Yeah, yes, thank you. All power to your elbow. I think those of us in the Peak Park would love to see our planning department help us to preserve the houses in which we live, which are solid walled, rubble filled, limestone, damp, solid floors, probably laid on earth. So we've got big challenges. We can do a lot, but we do actually need the planners to help us and allow us to install heat pumps and put solar on roofs which are adjacent, possibly within the curtilage listed building, but not on the actual historic building, which Historic England's happy with.
Okay. Well, I will honestly, it is, like I said, it is on my to-do list, and I will keep you posted.
Thank you.
Keep you posted.
All strength to your elbow is what we say.
Stevie Hornsby also has a question on solar on Grade 2 listed building inside the Peak District National Park. Do you want to read it yourself? Ask it yourself, Stevie, or do you want me to read it out?
No, that's okay. I can ask. So yeah, I live in a Grade 2 listed building in the Peak District. 5 years ago, the previous owner of my house applied for solar panels, and they were rejected by Peak District National Park. I was wondering if you were seeing any changes in their policy or decision making, and was interested in your view on, like, in the future, how likely it is that I'll be able to have solar panels on a part of my house.
Well, so the thing I haven't seen, I have just been going through the Warm Homes Plan policy, which looks at, so the focus is all on green technology, and it's all on generation, electrification of heating, and they say very little about energy, about insulation, only in relation to training and the private rented sector, which obviously is a failing. But I also, with the work I do, we were very much involved in the East Midlands Combined County Authority retrofit strategy, which has very recently been launched. And so, and with that, it's a very new department. So it's, the mayors, there's various ones across the country, different regions run by the mayor. And I think this is something that we bring to them. So, and I can do that. So what I will do is I can speak to the person who's in charge on that side of things is Michael Gallagher. I can speak to him and I can see what we can do to look at this issue. So
that would be great. Because
then,
I've heard that would be great if you could do it, because I've heard the head of the Peak District National Park say, yes, we're keen to be enablers, and then on the ground, you just hear case after case where it's blocked. Yeah. So there seems to be not joined up thinking between the head of the Peak District National Park and the actual people who give permission or don't, who seem to be still in the dark ages.
Because the thing is, because the other thing is as well is that the big push with this recent launch of the Warm Homes Plan, whilst there's loads of detail that is missing in terms of how it's going to be actually going to operate, but one thing is a universal offer. So, and what they're trying to do with that plan is make sure there is something for everyone. So there's more money going into grants. They've expanded the boiler upgrade scheme so that it will run until 2030, for instance. They've got plans for 300 million 300 million solar panel arrays to be installed by 2030. So they've got, big ambitious plans, 450,000 by 2030, 450,000 heat pumps being installed every year. I mean, they're way off at the moment. So the thing is, with those really ambitious plans, I think there is a time for us to say more about what's needed and what you would like. And I think we can do that. I can definitely do that. And I can speak to East Midlands Combined County Authority, because it's only the other week, while the focus was on, I think the focus was more for low-income households, but there was a conference or meeting regarding rural communities. So, and with this whole thing of let's provide something for everyone, then I think we should, we can do this.
I've got other questions, but let me just see if anybody else has a question. We were getting some feedback, and it wasn't from because I was on mute. So if you're not speaking, if you could keep on mute so we don't have Miranda echoing, that would be great. Does anybody else have a question right at this minute? Well, while people are thinking, what I'm wondering is, you said that for the bigger houses and for landlords, you're going to get people to pay something for their survey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be very interested, are you going to monitor how many of those turn into people who actually do things? Because you said you had 440 surveys and 60 people then installed measures.
Yeah.
And I would be interested whether, if you're paying, there's then a higher proportion. I've not done the maths about what proportion that is, but I've heard it said that you only need to charge people quite a small sum, and then that a lot of people will get a survey just for interest, and when they hadn't any intention to do anything. And when you get them to pay just a small sum, then it's the people who are really interested in doing something that actually ask for the survey.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think so. Just to go back on those numbers. So we've continued to collect our numbers for the numbers for Nottinghamshire. So we don't have any more numbers. I mean, it's just the way we work. So with everyone goes onto our database and we track absolutely everything. So yes, we would track and we can easily pull that data off to see with the ones that paid, have they gone ahead and actually installed anything. But yeah, so the numbers, whilst we've got all the surveys, but the install data, we do not have all the install data for Derbyshire. I think we just had 9, I think, installs from Derbyshire by the end of the project, because there was delays. But so yes, we can pull that off. But I think I personally, we've run various projects over the years, and there was a period, I think, hold on, what years? Probably 2010, around that time, and we had a lot of funding through the local authorities to run free insulation schemes for loft and cavity wall insulation, for instance. And generally those free schemes were aimed at the people on a lower income. But what we did is we could have got it for people as well, self-funding households, but there was a charge, because then it meant the money went further. So we put a charge on it. So it was like £49 for loft insulation and £49 for cavity wall insulation, and we were inundated. And we really do believe that to put a small charge helps. It's just that the way the funding is, we cannot. And so we had to, and so that was a bit of a compromise to say, well, look, where we've got really large properties, it can take a really long time to survey. Please, can we charge? And people have paid. I didn't think people would pay. So that's the kind of surprised me. I thought, are they going to think it's too much? But people have paid. So that's been good.
I hadn't thought of the funders imposing the fact that it should be free. That's interesting.
Yeah, I know.
How many retrofit coordinators do you have? Do you have one person doing all these surveys
No,
themselves?
we have one, two, we have two, and then we have a backup. You always need a backup. It's easy, I
The other
can't.
thing I'd be interested in is you talked about local groups
Mhm.
helping in a particular area.
Yeah.
So what sort of things, because Hope Valley Climate Action's obviously a very distinct area. What sort of things have other areas, local group area, have done in other areas?
So, oh right. So they've got their newsletter, so they'll put information out in their newsletter. And the newsletter, so they'll have so we produced an article telling them about so there's a piece about the project and what other events are coming up. And so they'll put that out electronically, or they'll print it and it's posted through doors. They've also distributed leaflets, put up posters, for instance. Trying to think what else they've done. But generally, it just really helped get people in. Or otherwise, and also when they have links to other groups, then it's, you've got this chain effect, and they'll be saying, look, I need you to come down to this group and come to that group and so on. So it's been really good. But honestly, it just provides that greater connection to the community, because people are thinking, well, who are you? And so, yeah, that really helps.
Thank you, because, maybe we should think of doing something. We did quite a lot of promotion in the beginning, but unfortunately, we had one or two people who didn't have a good result from their home survey,
Okay.
and so we stopped promoting it.
Okay.
But maybe we should look again, because it sounds
Sure.
like the fact that it's all under your control, and
Mm.
as you've talked about how some of the differences, because MEA is very much geared up to the people in fuel poverty,
Yeah.
and so maybe some of those differences mean that now it's all under your management, it might be better aimed at the able to pay people.
Maybe. I mean, we'd always say to, people, I mean, it's fine if people have had an issue, they can always come back to us and we can see if there's anything else we can do for them. Because that's just, for us, we like to get it right. And so, if you are aware of those people and they want to come back, they're more than welcome. You just call me.
Okay. Well, that's useful. I'm not sure whether this long after would
No,
be relevant. I could
fair
ask.
enough.
But anyway, Simon's got a question.
Just coming back to what you're talking about, we've, as HVCA Energy Group, we've been thinking about trying to train people, volunteers from villages, so they are known by their local community to be a sort of local, simple home energy assessor, and perhaps do simple retrofit like draft proofing, foil behind radiators, etc. Have you any experience of that? Is that
Yeah.
something that we should pursue, or should we leave it to organisations like yourself to push you instead?
I think, do you know what? Our home improvement manager, Darren Barker, is a lovely guy. I would say to talk to him. He actually ran a project. It was funded by Cadent, and he did exactly that. So what he would do, he actually had a team of people, I think, contractors, and they would do the draft proofing, and the the smaller measures. and I think so. It'd be good to talk to him because at least then you would have how does it work, or how did it work for him, to see whether or not that is something that you could viably do. But it's because it's quite. There's always like the whole what's it called? Not safeguarding, just the whole
Yes.
issue. Pardon?
Yeah. Insurance, etc.,
Yeah.
etc.
And safeguarding actually is something you have to consider as well with volunteers. We do some voluntary work, or we work with volunteers. We spend a lot of time putting together the policies and so on, and it's quite intense. But there's two people I could, voluntary side, there's our project manager, Patrick Keane, but with the DIY project, that you were talking about sounds very similar to one we delivered for 2 years. When he just finished it, it'll be worthwhile. I can arrange it if you want, get him to speak to you.
Remind us of the name again. I didn't quite write it down.
Darren Barker.
Darren Barker. Thank you.
What I'll do is I'll send you an email afterwards, and I'll put his details in. And Darren's really lovely because he's always happy to take calls. So Simon, you could call him. I'll let him know tomorrow.
It's amazing how the time's gone. It's
What time
suddenly
is
three
it?
minutes to 9.
Oh, right,
So,
okay.
unless somebody has suddenly thought of a last-minute question, I've got the great privilege and joy of thanking you for coming. And, you've given up, presumably, I hope you get time off in lieu so you get the time back some other time, but you've given up your
Thank you.
evening to come and talk to us.
Okay.
And it's been really interesting because we were involved at the beginning. As Simon said, there was the Tideswell workshop and then there was the one in Bamford.
Yeah.
And we did do some promoting in the early days.
Thank
And
you.
it's been really, therefore, interesting to hear how it's gone. And to hear that out of all the surveys you did, I mean, you said that you thought 60 was a great number, but I had naively maybe imagined that it would be much more people doing installing.
Yeah. I mean, it would be lovely, but I think that I'm hoping that in this round, this next phase, we'll see more people. So
Thank you.
I will keep him, got an eager eye. We certainly saw very quickly someone had a heat pump installed. And I think also, when there's going to be more of a push from the government, so I think people might be more interested. So we'll see. But I've got my fingers crossed that we'll see a lot more conversions.
I think the other thing is it would be worth following up your first batch of people again, because sometimes it just takes longer.
Yeah.
Just, to most people have a bit of loft insulation. To top it
Yeah.
up to the proper 300 mils means you've got to take all your stuff out of the attic.
Yeah.
And that can be daunting in itself.
I
So
know.
it can often just simply take longer to get one's act together. So
Yeah.
be interesting if you get. Anyway, this is getting a sidetrack. Thank you very, very much for coming. It's been
Thank
really
you.
interesting and lovely to have you. And thank
Lovely
you
to
very,
see you
very
all.
much.
Thanks, Anne. See you. Bye.